And I'd like to invite the panelists to the stage. We will continue the discussion. We'll broaden it out with the theme of democratizing technology. So our first panelist, Alex Gruszka. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Startup Australia. If you don't know Startup Australia, they are the organization that works closely with government to transform the nation through technology entrepreneurship. Welcome, Alex. Next up, legendary serial entrepreneur Jen George is Managing Director of Tamme, a marketing analytics hyperlocal company, and prior to that founded OneShift and Skilled. Jen won the 2017 Telstra New South Wales Young Businesswoman's Award. Ben Wong is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Academy XI, providing courses and training programs in the areas of design and emerging technologies to working professionals and to companies that are looking to skill up. Liesl Yearsley, founder and chief executive officer of Akin, which is developing a new approach to general artificial intelligence, able to autonomously solve problems and form deep relationships with humans, which may be why Liesl is in Sydney right now setting up Akin's first ethical artificial intelligence lab. We'll talk about that in a moment. Say hello to Angie Abdullah, Trawaway woman, and founder and chief executive officer of Old Ways New. Angie's work on Indigenous knowledge systems, robotics, and artificial intelligence created the foundations for her social enterprise working in service design and digital development based on Indigenous traditional technologies. Welcome, guys. All right, Liesl. Thank you for my glasses. I might need these at some point. You have been very busy here speaking at CeBIT and setting up the Center for Ethical AI. Now, as more of the world becomes algorithmic, and Jim was really talking about this, we are facing this critical need to foreground ethics in engineering. But that's kind of a new idea to people. People go, engineering, ethics, they connect? How do we change that? How do we bridge that disconnection? How do we democratize ethics while we're very busily democratizing the extremely powerful technology of artificial intelligence?
With great difficulty. You know, one of the things that struck me, as you heard earlier, I ran Cognia, which was acquired by IBM Watson, and before we were acquired, we had 26,000 developers. We were doing about 60 million interactions. And I saw this incredible thing happen. I used to run a search engine before this, and I know that what you see has massive impact on you. But AI has more ability than any other technology form I've ever worked with to form deep, pervasive hooks in your life and to influence you. We are wired like cavemen. You know, if something talks and acts like a human and solves problems in the same way we do and reasons the way we do and looks you in the eyes or talks to you in a beautiful voice when you walk in the door and say, I really missed you. How was your day? Would you like some chocolate? You know, it's really challenging. We had corporations wanting us to shift behavior in all sorts of domains. We were responsible for, you know, lots of new debt and lots of you know, we had media companies who wanted us to build characters that essentially we watched users become addicted to, spend 20, 40 hours a week with. So, you know, what I'm really interested in is how do we take this next generation of AI and bake rules and parameters into it. We're not even going to notice how much AI is a part of our lives. You know, we already don't. If you use Spotify, there's AI in there. If you use Google Maps, it knows where you're going, who you're going to meet, what you're going to talk about when you get there. There's forms of AI in there. Amazon Prime is now in 64% of US households. They pay a subscription for the privilege of buying pretty much everything from Amazon. Affluent households, it's over 80%. We don't even know what's coming. That's why everyone's battling for the human home. So we now have this technology moving into our lives that's going to be incredibly persuasive. I believe it's going to take 30 to 40% of our decision load from us. It's going to form probably a quarter of all our relationship time. And yet, what is the optimization parameters behind this? A particular poignant moment for me was when we had Alexa in our home. My husband keeps bringing a version home, and I keep on plugging it and throwing it in the drawer. But I suddenly looked at my credit card, and we'd spent $200 and something on pizza. And one of the top downloaded apps in the US is a pizza ordering app. And I watched my son stand over Alexa go, "Alexa, pizza." So what's happened here? Number one, he stood over a submissive female. They're pretty much all female. He said, "Give me something." "No, thank you." You can say you're stupid and she'll say, "Sorry," there. Number two, he's blown my budget. Number three, he doesn't have to do dishes or, respect the household parameters. And number four, the cost of this is worn externally. We now ate 1,000 calories that night. Society ultimately bears this. You take that one moment and you multiply it over hundreds of millions of people over an entire society. And we are now in our current capitalism, in our current capitalistic system, that's a win. I've had a transaction. The company makes money, they win. If I could go out tomorrow and build an AI company that has people locked in a room spending 40 hours a week with a beautiful character who pretends to love them. But that's not the world I want to live in either. So what we're really interested in doing is figuring out how do we benchmark a new way to do AI. We are doing deep research into the next generation of core AI that can think like a human, but we're also doing research into how, one day these are going to get smarter than us. They may already be, and we wouldn't know it in a lab somewhere. What is their design parameter going to be? Is it going to make our life better or not? And these are measurable things. And I think that every single corporation in the world, even if we don't succeed at this, we want to be part of this new flagship wave of technologies and companies that say, well, there is a better way. We can build systems that we can trust. My data should belong to me. It should make my life better. It should make my quality of experience richer. My attention, my time, and what I spend my life on is important. And it should go from this way outward instead of being imposed on us. Sorry, that was a bit long, but yeah.
Well, good. All right, so Angie, we clearly need ethics if we're going to manage a very potent technology like AI at scale, where it's everywhere, and it kind of already is everywhere. We're just really noting that. How does Indigenous knowledge offer approaches to such a new discipline?
So Indigenous knowledge systems are otherwise known as law, so that's L-O-R-E, not L-A-W. So what I understand is an Indigenous knowledge system it's the culmination of all things like spirituality, kinship, cosmology, sciences, philosophy, the arts. It's all of those things. It's also law, L-A-W. And within L-O-R-E, it's like an action guide to living. And that's how Indigenous peoples have lived and still do by law, L-O-R-E, which is otherwise known as the dreaming or Drukrpa. So within Indigenous knowledge systems or law, I see an incredible opportunity for governance and better systems. So imagine if we were thinking about the custodial ethic, which is like the repetition of an action until it becomes the norm. That's what caring for country and caring for kin is. Innately, we have social and environmental sustainability practices and principles baked into our way of connecting to country and kin. So imagine if you take that system of governance as a way of future-proofing the future developments of AI.
Right. And so you're future-proofing that request for pizza, because it wouldn't really even have gotten to that point, because to make that happen sort of requires so many different ways of thinking about the problem.
That's right, yeah. Also, I guess thinking about the way that AI comes together, when looking at country, understanding your relationship to country comes from a symbiotic relationship to it. So you care for country, it cares back for you. But understanding how to read country, it's like what I've been told is a term called pattern thinking. Now, I don't come from a technical background, but later after developing this research, it became aware to me that it's a very technical term as well. But pattern thinking from an Indigenous perspective is an understanding of the interrelationship and interconnection of all things. So that's in country, and country's an entity, so it's all those things, cosmology, kinship, systems, all of it. Pattern recognition is an understanding of being able to, is innately reading land and being able to be in that. So imagine if we were to take concepts and the principles and the practice of pattern thinking and pattern recognition and apply that to artificial intelligence for a more holistic system that's based on the core principles of social and environmental sustainability practices.
Gotcha. That's great. Ben, education is a foundational element in any democracy, right? You have to have mass education, you're going to have mass democracy. That doesn't matter whether it's a political democracy or a technical democracy. But of course, it's more than that, and I'm going to put my futurist hat on for a second, because I can tell that the world that we're heading into right away, we're going to spend about as much time upskilling in the next thing we're doing as practicing the skills that we've already learned. Are we on any path that leads us to that? Do we have to think now about democratizing education as we work toward democratizing technology?
Yeah, look, I think education from itself is, we haven't really prepared for it, right? So if you think about where we are in the sort of educational path, it's one of the biggest industries out there. We haven't evolved completely, of decades and centuries now, and but at the same time, technology has allowed us to evolve. We're seeing edtech companies constantly get support over the last 3 years. I think there was $7 billion in funding for edtech companies. So we are seeing education evolve over time. If you look at the sort of educational industry as itself, I think in Australia, for example, or even globally, about 65 to 75% of people who are taking courses, aren't actually are studying for things that are going to completely change in the future. So, there's a real problem here. And, as time goes by, we're seeing more and more graduates come out of uni. They're not getting jobs, and are not able to get jobs. And, this once again, the educational institutions aren't able to keep up the pace of technology. It's moving too fast. So considering all these things in mind, like, we can't be in an environment where we just learn once, or we take a degree and we don't learn for the rest of our career. We have to be lifetime learners. We have to constantly keep our skills updated. If we don't, we'll soon become, we'll fall behind from that. So I think, looking at self-learning and the internet, and we're in an age now where the internet is so powerful. We have access to more knowledge than we've ever had in our entire lives. There's amazing online programs. You can take, you can go and do a science lab now, like a virtual science lab that you can do experiments on and not make mistakes without having to worry about the repercussions. So technology is really driving the change in education. But educational models, in my opinion, aren't moving fast enough to be able to cater to the demands of technology, which we're finding. So if we look at sort of the democratization of technology, do I think that education is going to be democratized? I'd love that to happen at Academy XI. Like, that's part of our mission, making education more accessible. But I think what's going to happen is that technology is going to drive education, and it's going to drive the need and the access to a quality education around the world. We're already seeing that in different virtual formats, blended formats, flipped classroom models. In the States, there's Khan Academy, and Khan Academy, although schools aren't using this outside technology, we're finding teachers are bringing these sort of tools into the classroom and allowing kids and youth to learn off this really valuable technology. So I think that as lifetime learners, we're going to find that we're going to be consistently learning, and if we don't consistently learn, we're going to fall behind. But technology is going to be an enabler to be able to, I guess, technology is going to democratize education in a way.
Alex, we have made great strides in the startup ecosystem and community in Sydney, but in Australia generally. If you took a photograph 3 years ago and a photograph now, people would go, my God, this is amazing. So I sort of have a two-part question here. One part is, are we done? Is this the end? Have we done enough? But the second part is something that, I'm adjunct faculty at UTS, and part of what the mandate from the Vice Chancellor is that all of the undergraduates have to now have a background in entrepreneurship, because it's likely that the world that they're going into, they will be working for themselves at least some of the time, and probably a lot more than some of the time. So is this conversation around democratizing technology also a conversation around democratizing entrepreneurship?
Well, not just entrepreneurship maybe, but computer programming as well. Could well be there. Look, I think technology changes all of the rules in very unpredictable ways. 15 years ago, the rules I was given was don't give out your credit card on the internet and don't step inside the car or house of a stranger. Now, two of the biggest tech companies in the world do precisely those things. So I think making prescriptions about what's likely to happen is going to be, have the challenge of the fact that there's this big boulder coming. That being said, I think one of the things that's most predictable is that the countries of the future that get to participate in the global economy, that get to be first world, that get to have influence around the world, are going to be those that are high in tech. Liesl is setting up an ethics for AI foundation. Is it foundation? Sorry.
It's a public benefit corporation.
Public benefit corporation in Australia. That doesn't happen unless we have the ability to staff it with talent, unless we have the ability to propagate that without our economy and our influence in the world. And technology in Australia is far behind some of our peers. So in America, by market cap, about 20% of your economy is tech businesses. In Australia, that's about 1%. Our largest good export in Australia is iron ore. That's not iron, it's rock with iron in it. We don't actually go through the process of getting the iron out. So we have world-class education, we have high talent, but we aren't really converting that human capital into value for our economy, and that really puts us in danger for the future. In those same 15 years that the rules have been changed about credit cards and staying in people's houses, the Sydney company Atlassian went from not existing to now being a company that's worth $14 billion US and is twice the size of Qantas. So if we want to really be impactful on the world stage, if we want to continue to be part of the first world, if we want to grow our economy, focusing on the tech sector is the single most powerful lever we have to do that.
So this really is about democratizing entrepreneurship at the same time, because that's the way we grow the economy.
Absolutely the biggest driver that we have. And also, our smart kids at the moment are asked, do you want to be a doctor or a lawyer?
Yeah.
They are not asked, do you want to be an entrepreneur? And we need that to change.
Jan, we cannot call anything democratic unless it's fully representative and fully diverse. And tech has been notorious for underrepresentation of anyone who isn't a white male. Now, you decided to do something about this by founding an organization that I can only refer to by its initials. Those initials are LMBDW. If you folks Google that, you'll understand why I can't say it out loud.
But I can.
Has creating a space for like-minded people to congregate, has that helped, and how do you see us pushing through to this continuously advancing front of representation that's necessary if we're going to have democratized technology?
Are there any LMBs or like-minded bitches in the building tonight? Yeah. Nice, thanks for coming. But it's funny, 7 years ago, I was in the startup space going to Fish Burners, which had just opened. It was a co-working space for tech startups to work next to each other, try and help each other out, and kind of have cheap desks, because let's be frank, the 2-minute noodles were even too expensive at that point, where you're trying to start your business. And I have never seen another woman who's running a startup, let alone a tech startup. And so I was speaking at another event, and I was the token woman on the panel again, because, tick that box, diversity. Rather than what was I actually doing. And you'd constantly get people going, oh, cool, you're a girl, you do stuff in business. Not, oh, great, you're building a business, what are you actually focusing on? You wouldn't get the same questions that the guys would get. And so I met this other woman, and her name was Jane Liu, and she does a business called Showpo. Amazing business, amazing, things that they're doing over there. And we thought, well, why don't we catch up once a month, go for a glass of wine, and just see how we can connect and help each other out and focus on growing our businesses rather than all this, ticking a box and there's a girl on the panel kind of BS. And so we caught up, and then the next dinner we had about 30 other women join us, and then we thought an email chain's a bit over the top, so Facebook groups just started, so we thought, why don't we all just jump in a Facebook group? And of course, after 1 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 glasses of wine, what do we call this thing? Well, we're like-minded bitches drinking wine. So within 6 months, there's about 10,000 women who joined. We're now 2 and a bit years in. We're 75,000 women across the world with monthly catch-ups in about 40 cities. We actually got invited to Buckingham Palace last year. Not for the wedding, don't worry, not upset.
Should be more worried if it's Prince Andrew.
Let's hope. But it was all about just creating that connection and being able to find people in that space, you know, who were running businesses. So it wasn't the, oh, you're the only one. It's, oh, okay, there's a whole community out there doing this thing. And that's really evolved over the last few years. In Sydney, there's a lot more recognition, or a lot more people actually raising their hand and going, I'm doing this too. More people who have access to computers, the internet, etc., or finding courses on how to start a business. Learning how to code is really important. So what we're seeing is a huge shift from not only that just get started phase, it's now moved into the, okay, you're not just interested in starting a business, but now we need to see more females actually coding. I actually only met my first female engineer, as strange as this sounds, who is now actually my co-founder for Tamme, Jess, who's an absolute genius on steroids, but she's very, very rare because you just don't seem to meet other people. So what we're seeing in the space are people like Blackbird VC who are doing scholarships for women to actually learn to code in lots of different programs like General Assembly. We're seeing a lot more different programs like Launch Code, which would be amazing to get more things like that in Australia. Are you guys actually in Australia?
So we'd love to be, and
we should talk.
Launch Code's a nonprofit, and an interesting thing happened at Launch Code, because we originally started as a placement company, and we were so successful at getting people jobs, because it's hard to get somebody a job who's just been trained as a programmer, because no sane IT manager will hire somebody who doesn't have experience. So we figured out how to solve that, and once we did, the solution created this huge talent shortage. And so we started teaching free classes, and we just took the Harvard curriculum, which is available online for free, and we just used it for a 1,000-person class. And as I was, about 2 weeks after the course started, a lady who worked in one of my offices said, "Oh, Jim, when are you doing the next class?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't even know if that's going to work, or if Harvard is going to sue us, so I'm not sure there will be another class. But you don't have to wait for us." I said, "You can take it online for free." But my recommendation to her was, don't do it by yourself. Get a couple of friends, because it's really hard material. You'll want somebody to talk to, or, you know. And so she organized a Facebook group and got 300 women, just women, to take this class with her. And so we set up a division of Launch Code, which is all female. And it's been this sort of magic alchemy, because something about kicking the guys out made it work. And so we would love to bring Coder Girl and the rest of Launch Code, if you want it, to Australia. So, and it's, you know, it is a free thing that I think the world needs. So there you go.
Amazing. We've actually got something we're about to announce shortly, but very similar space. It'd be great to kind of connect and see what we can do.
Okay, so first question for the whole panel. Just in the last week, it was announced that Google has amended its employee guidelines and specifically taken the words "don't be evil" out of them. I'm not making this up. I wish I were making this up. And this points back to both the enormous power of the technologies, and they're mostly artificial intelligence technologies that Google has, but also the culture. And it's a startup culture that underlies them. What is that relationship, and how do all of you negotiate that relationship between culture and product and profit and vision? Because that is almost the hard point around democratizing a technology that doesn't ruin people. Who wants to go first? It's a small question.
I mean, I'll take a stab at it. I don't think you can legislate this stuff. I think what you need to do is build rule systems. So the best rule systems are ones that naturally evolve. Market forces tend to be the most stable. And so if you can figure out a rule that rewards good behavior, which a capitalist economy does a pretty good job of it, except for things like companies that get too powerful and then start hoarding data, and then you have to then...
Oh, you mean Facebook? Sorry, I said that out loud.
Yeah, and I mean, there are plenty of them, but
yes,
there's one,
yes.
okay?
Yeah.
And Google's another, and some of my friends built the original search engine, and they said, you know, sort of off the record, that there was a comma in the Google motto. So I think what you hope for is that a system arises that naturally rewards good behavior.
I'm going to just have a little debate here, because I don't think there's a capitalistic system in the world that would reward a company that goes, hey, these people are spending less money and hanging out with their kids 3 hours a day instead of watching Netflix. I'm grappling with this. I think it's actually harder than building complex, deep AI that thinks like a human being.
Oh, yeah.
Is the issue of how do you build a company that has weight and gravitas in the world, that's in millions and tens of millions of homes, that, you know, you have this path in companies, you know, where you get your honeymoon capital and you go out on your grand big mission, and then you've got this place in between, and 5 years later, you stand there and you go, I can't remember crossing that line. It wasn't like this nice, clear line where now I'm going to do something bad. It's just one client who says, can we use it a little bit like this? You think, well, we're going to take the money and do something good. And, you know, so I have just removed my mic. I'm fiddling with my hair, so I'll do this. You know, I started a search company before Cognia, and the mission was very clear. You know, is that working? Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up in Africa, I moved country a lot from Zambia to Zimbabwe, and I ended up in South Africa, smack in the middle of the apartheid era. It's going to sound really strange to everyone here, but I didn't know what was going on in our own country. And I didn't know about Group Areas Act and forced removals. And one morning, I got up really early, and I picked up the newspaper on the front doorstep, and 1/3 of the newspaper was blank. What is going on here? And what had happened is every night the media had to give all of their articles to the government, and the government just ripped into everything they didn't like. And then they spent the rest of the night reformatting the newspaper so you didn't realize this was missing. And this newspaper, as a form of silent protest, decided to just go with the original format and print blank spaces for everything we weren't allowed to see. And I thought, what is it that I don't know? It transformed my life. And it made me really think about information. We don't have a lot of ability to consume absolutely everything. So what you put in front of somebody typically influences what they think and what they feel. Yeah. So back to the story, I started the search engine thinking we're going to help people really deep dive and, you know, find out what their true intent is and not do this giant popularity contest. And we got the tech right. We got the algorithms right. And 5 years later, I was sitting atop a vast ad serving engine. And I can't remember that line. It went public, you know, and I left. But, you know, this is what I'm saying. I think that is a very key challenge. Capitalism does work, but I don't see, I admire your optimism.
Well, it wasn't optimistic, there was a comma. And the comma is, but that frequently doesn't work, and then you need government or something.
Yeah.
But Facebook has gone through that exact same, and still is, and forevermore will go through this journey. 7 years ago, when they had their Facebook access to their APIs, I mean, Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, the amount of data they were trusting with developers was crazy. But they made that decision to then tighten that all up after, mostly from public opinion, I'm sure.
Okay.
I think what's sorry to interrupt, but what's insidious about this challenge is that, so imagine Netflix or YouTube, which prompts the next video that you're going to watch, right? So you're watching Netflix, finish one, the next video starts. You might think, oh, I didn't really want to watch it, but now I'm going to, and you feel like you lost an hour of your life. But you could design that process to be the best process it could possibly be. It could scour the internet for the single video that gives you the most anything you can, the most enjoyment, the most information, the video across the whole internet that you need right now. And that still probably isn't a better system. It still probably ends up evil, because you're still probably ending up watching video after video after video.
YouTube has been doing this, and it's been ending up radicalizing people because it's feeding them a stream of ISIL videos or white supremacist videos, and they've seen how that algorithm feeds on itself to give the person what they need. So you're absolutely right.
On the positive side, though, you know, we also did a lot of deployments where we were specifically looking for a positive outcome in people's lives, like maybe health behavior for pre-diabetics or, you know, better social behavior or whatever. And you can also use AI to bring about massive positive shifts in how people consume, how they grow, how they connect with other people. And what I hope and what I'm optimistic about is that you can have a business model emerge where, if you have a partner in your life, we've all had relationships where, it's painful and you get to the end of the week and think, why am I doing this? And 5 years later you're out of it and you go, my gosh, what was I doing? And then you have relationships in your life where your partner says, you could win a Nobel Prize, or you should do it, I believe in you. And those relationships are more rewarding and they tend to feed us more, even if we're spending less or consuming less. And that is my hope, that we should have a class of tech emerging that does really look to optimization, but the model in that I don't think is purely served by capitalism as it stands today. I don't know.
Okay, we're very close to wrapping up. I want to throw one question at the whole panel. What can we do, what can the people in this room do, what can we do as entrepreneurs in Sydney to make this city a great place for democratizing technologies?
I think that we have to get back to the intention and the purpose of designing technologies. Like, it comes from that very first question, I think, and the principles and practices that we embed within the process of development. Because as I talked about before, the custodial ethic is the repetition of actions until it becomes the norm. So I think that our processes, the way that we develop technology has to change. That's the way that we're going to see those shifts in the development of AI, I think, and the ethics embedded into those principles and practices of the developers themselves.
A very practical thing we can do is get better at rewarding people for taking big, audacious, crazy risks. It's one of the key reasons I spend most of my time in the US instead of here, and I love it here, and we have more development team here than we do in the US. But here you typically go to an investor or a business partner and they say, prove it, show us your blue chip customers. And you say, AI is going to be 1/3 of all human interaction. They go, yeah, right. You go there and they go, by when? And if you say there, I'm going to touch 1 billion lives. And they go, okay. Here they think you're crazy. So I actually had a weird experience when I went to the US and was raising for the first time. I used to turn up with my deck with, my blue chip customers and my revenue. And I didn't raise because I thought we were just this boring, narrow enterprise company. I took it out of my presentation and started talking about transforming society, and I got my first venture offer. It took me about half a year to figure that out. But we are not an ecosystem, we're not a society. Even our venture community is fantastic and growing, but all of their criteria: show us your first big, boring, decades-old blue chip customers who are not the future, they're the past, and show us how you're monetizing them, not how are you going to transform 8 billion lives. And that, I think, we need to do more of if we don't want to lose the best and the brightest.
So as an outsider, I would say take advantage of the fact that you have your own continent. Yeah, you don't even need a wall, right? If you got New Zealand on guard, they're good enough. If you look at sort of the revolutionary things, the latest one to come out was Spotify. Okay, so here's the thing about Spotify. Whether or not it's helping musicians, forget about that. But everyone knew that it had to be, and nobody, the accepted mentality was that it would be impossible, that nobody would be able to get all the labels to work together because they hate each other. They would never be able to put this group together. So they started in Sweden, where they have this sort of music culture, and nobody really gives a crap about Sweden because, it's over there, and, our president can't tell it from Norway, so what the hell. But they got it working, and nobody paid attention, and then they kind of, you have the opportunity. Look, you're not going to be Silicon Valley. Go in these things. No, you're not. Okay, so we're not going to give you that funding, but you have a different advantage. Okay, and the Australian continent has evolved some really deadly species. Why not extend that to some of your companies?
Ben?
Yeah, I think technology really is almost its own organism, right? So if you feed it, it's going to grow. And I feel that as entrepreneurs, we need to create or solve problems, like focusing on the actual problems that are going to affect a lot of people. And as consumers, being able to support great problems that are solving your lives and making it more convenient or actually doing good in the world. And then leveraging, with all these problems in the world, how do we leverage like really great technologies that are going to support solving these problems? So you think about something like blockchain, there's always this hype and there's things about cryptocurrencies, but at the end of the day, it is a technology that could make positive impacts around both social and economic impacts. So I think just finding really good problems to support and not focusing on the solution and this flashy thing that's all out there, but instead actually looking how the world can change and evolve.
10 seconds, Jen.
Keeping tech talent here in Australia, education for more tech talent here in Australia, and then funding.
Alex?
Yeah, I think it's cultural. So focus on entrepreneurs, tech talent coming in is there to support and grow Australian businesses, grow jobs here, not take them. Focus on, if your kid comes home and says, I'm starting a startup, be happy, not scared.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Alex, Jen, Ben, Jim, Liesl, and Angie.